Welcome to the Heal, Thrive, Dream podcast, where trauma survivors become healthy thrivers. Each month, we'll feature a theme in the trauma recovery and empowerment field. To promote your recovery, healing, and learning how to build dreams, here's your host, Karen Robinson, transformational coach and therapist.
Hello, welcome to the Heal, Thrive, Dream podcast. Today we have a treat for you. We have Ms. Judy Wilkins Smith. And I'm going to read her bio really quick. I'm moving it over here. Let's see. Judy is a world-renowned systematic work and constellations expert, motivational speaker, and author of Decoding Your Emotional Blueprint, a powerful guide to transformation through disentangling multigenerational patterns. She shares her expertise on relinquishing the victimhood mindset and harnessing the power positivity. Judy, I'm so happy you're here today. Thanks for being here.
Karen, thank you for having me. It's lovely to be here.
Awesome. So let's start with just making sure that you're aware that my audience is a woman, primarily our age. The whole gamut of age range I'm finding are gravitating to the topic of trauma, healing, and recovery. So one of the first things I like to ask my guests is, are you a survivor? Can you relate to these women in any kind of way?
Gosh, yes, I can. And yes, I can. And sure, I've had a number of things happen to me, all sorts of really difficult situations. Broke my neck. They didn't expect me to, they didn't expect me to be able to move again from the neck down. And thankfully I do, and I'm perfect. But there have been a number of ones that women struggle with, things like being molested as a kid, things like being second class because they're women. And I think for me, I got to a stage where I got tired of the suffering. I got tired of it. It got old. And I think the beautiful piece of or about the work that I do, the systemic work in Constellations, is that it really teaches you, here's the pattern. And by the way, we'll talk about this, that you've inherited. Here's why it's showing up for you. Here's what you can do. I think I've always known that there was something better, bigger, more wonderful. And I'm really far more interested in what's on the other side of the brick wall. So
right.
I'm really interested in what's happening for you. And what do we do with that? How do we turn it into something absolutely wonderful? And
yes.
I think you had pointed out earlier, you said, oh, you're the one who says suffering isn't glamorous. Yes, I am that one. In fact, I got into trouble for it because somebody said to me, suffering is sacred. And I said to them, no, suffering is stupid. But let me qualify. We're all going to hit suffering at some point. We will. It's the nature of being a human being, basically. It's what you do with that. And it's when you keep stewing in it and you keep staying stuck in it, that it's not particularly smart. However, if you don't know you're stuck in it, it's even worse. So what I teach people is to understand where they're stuck, where that came from, what they could do with it, and how they can have an incredible life, because that's seriously, Karen, is what we were born to do. We were born to have remarkable lives. We are remarkable lives if we know how to see them.
Awesome. So let's step back though a little bit before we do the positivity train, okay? I'm with you. It's really important. So the first thing is, for people listening, they're like, this woman, Judy, has an accent. Where is she from? So I want to share that with people because I think that's cool.
Sure. So I'm originally from South Africa. I'm now in Texas. So I know how to say half and ain't not never gonna and y'all. But yes, I'm originally from South Africa.
Awesome. And if you're willing, and if you're not, that's okay. I think I'm curious, so I'm guessing maybe the audience is also curious about what happened, if you're willing to share about how you broke your neck and that healing journey. I think could be helpful for listeners.
Oh, absolutely. So it was super interesting, and it goes right into the work that I do. It happened twice. The first time, twice, not once. I mean, I don't do things by halves. So I had a crack in the neck after I was driving. Believe it or not, in South Africa, we were having a day of prayer for rain. Driving along, and I have a lady next to me. She's pregnant, and she didn't have her safety belt on. And I saw a car coming behind us, and I knew it wasn't going to stop. So I took mine off and reached across her, and he hit us. And that was the first one. And a year later, I had somebody jump a light and hit into the back of me, and that fractured C5. And didn't really pay it much attention. And your viewers will cringe, or listeners will cringe. I was also teaching the artistic side of roller skating at the time. So I'm teaching the kids how to do the jumps and the spins and I'd had x-rays taken, and I was working in medicine at the time, in the medical arena, popped them under the guy's door, the orthopedic surgeon, because I really didn't feel like having a conversation on Friday. Get in on Monday, and he said to me, "You're in big trouble." And they didn't tell me. They told the family, "Look, she will be paralyzed from the neck down. The damage is too extensive." So I came round, and this is one of the other pieces that I think is really important for me. I came round, and nobody had told me. And my mother said to the doctor, "You don't tell her anything. We see what's going to happen." Came round, the neurosurgeon was sitting next to me, and he was in tears, and I knew him. And I said to him, what's the problem? And he said, "I just wish you'd walk." So I did, which freaked him out completely. And he said, "You're not supposedly able to walk." And I think one of the first things that I learned from that was, don't dictate my limits. Don't tell me where I'm limited, because all too often we want to tell people you can't, you shouldn't, you won't. And for me, that was a profound lesson. It wasn't the first time it had happened in my family, because my brother had had a stroke at the age of 3. And they said he would never, his capability wouldn't be much mentally or physically. And he is an accountant who plays racquetball. So I think early on, we learned that your limitations, a lot of the limitations were deeply felt, but very much in the mind. And I wanted to know how those connected. And I began to understand that when the brain tells the body a story that the body believes, that's when it becomes the truth. Only it's not the truth, it's your truth. And you can change it anytime you want to.
That's beautiful. And earlier too, with the trauma, you mentioned sexual abuse as a child. What kind of impact did that have on your life? Like, how did that impact your mindset, or did it?
It did for a long time. It did for a long time. I think also being raised I'm not Catholic, but I was raised in a convent, that whole convent school thing. And it was all about sin, and it was all about all of those good things. And for me, that meant I'd been in a really bad position, and now I was part of those fallen many, and all of that stuff, and went down that road, and then suddenly thought, it doesn't make sense. Why does that condemn me? Why does it mean I've got to suffer? And then I began to realize the same thing with the neck, which was an internal injury, right? So when we can't see it, it doesn't look that bad, but obviously deep down, there's a lot of suffering. And I looked at that and I thought, this is crazy. If I broke an arm, I know that if I break an arm and you can see it and they set it, it's going to have scars, but it comes back stronger. Why isn't that the same for if I'm broken internally?
And I think it is.
It is. This was the thing. And I wait a minute.
Mm.
There may be scarring, but that scarring could make me a whole lot stronger. And if it can make me stronger, what on earth am I doing indulging suffering? And I now know that I look back at myself 20 years ago and I go, oh my goodness, you were such a drama queen. Life was so angsty. What were you thinking? And it was when I got sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Yeah.
It was that simple. I got sick and tired of being sick and tired. And then I discovered that for me, suffering was not sacred. It meant I was keeping myself stuck. And I really wanted to find a positive, applicable, scientific, well-studied way that would take me out of where I was and into what I knew I could achieve. And that's pretty much what happened.
Well, okay, so tell us about that. The simple scientific way.
Simple scientific and well-studied, and also highly experiential and well observed. So that begins with systemic work and constellations. Now, I'll tell you a little bit about how I differ, but in systemic work and constellations, we understand that we often follow the patterns of our ancestors. What people don't understand is that you inherit not just your physical DNA, but also your emotional DNA. Those are your patterns of thoughts, feelings, and actions. And it makes good sense. You look at your mother, you go, I am my mother. You look at your grandmother, you go, oh, I got that from her. It can go back many, many generations. But you can also have a strong event that creates such an impact on you or your culture or your system that it creates an epigenetic impact. And that begins to affect subsequent generations of relationships and behavioral pieces, which also in turn, of course, then affects the physical side. So we know that once you start to work with the emotional DNA, you can also affect other areas of your life, your body, your being. And so where I play is, yes, we know that you've inherited the pattern. Yes, we know how it's affecting you. But then people began to say to me, I got it. I can feel something shifting. Now what? And that's when I began to realize that there are always two patterns in play. There's a pattern that's trying to stop, so the suffering, the sadness, and there's a pattern that's trying to emerge, and that's the dream, the happiness, the joy, the thriving. You'll find the pattern trying to stop in your genealogy, in your family history, and if you don't have that, you can timeline your own life and you will still see those patterns. When did it begin? What was happening for me at the time? What did I make it mean? But there's the other pattern. Oh, and also, by the way, in the irritations and frustrations. I can't stand that it's this way. There's the other pattern that goes, I wish, I want, if only. Now, those aren't just wishful thinking pieces. It's actually the chapter that's trying to write itself through you. That's a new chapter for the system. And once you begin adding your own chapter, you're no longer repeating ancient history. Now you're starting to live in the present and you're creating a very different future. And it is completely doable. It's one new thought, one new feeling, one new action at a time. You don't even have to eat the whole elephant at once.
Yeah, so baby step healings matter.
Baby steps really matter. Sometimes we think we want this, and it's not. It's we want this. Mm-hmm. You first got to take the step of being able to want this before you can go there.
Yeah. So this gift that you have to help survivors or anyone suffering, how do you get it to people other than your book? Like, do you have courses? I know you're a motivational speaker, so you speak about it, but do you have courses, trainings, workshops? How do you deliver?
Sure do. So there are a number of ways. Now, first of all, I have 2 meditations that people can download from my website. The one is the meditation of the mother. The other one is the meditation of the father. And it takes you it's a guided meditation, takes you all the way back into your genealogy and then brings you back to you. But it teaches you how to transform some of what's really been stuck for you. And I'm super fortunate because the person who composed the music for me and produced it is the same person who does the stuff for Joe Dispenza. I don't know if you know Joe Dispenza.
Yeah.
So same person, amazing, amazing guy. So they have that. We've got the book. There is a mini course that introduces you to all of the concepts and teaches you how to do it for yourself. The book was written specifically to teach people how to move from to on their own. And then, of course, I have events all over. I have one coming up now next weekend in Houston, and another one in July. And those are the two foundational events that also allow people to come in, learn about it, but not just learn about it. There's a thing called a constellation. And a constellation is a phenomenal piece of work. What happens is you come in, you bring your issue, and then we sit down and we dimensionalize it. We choose live representatives to represent the different parts of the issue. So say it was mom, dad, brother, sister, you. We have representatives for each of those pieces. And the reason that's important is that instead of trying to work it out here, you're now seeing it in front of you. You can see this one's turned away, this one faces this way, that these two are connected. So now you're seeing the relationships between all of the components. And then I ask you for a history. So what was happening? How does it affect you? Tell me what's going on. And I start to have a conversation with the client and with the representatives. And what happens then is they get to say, feel, do, be things that they've never been able to complete. And so the suffering, instead of being stuck, starts to move. And it moves very quickly. And what it then does is it rewires the brain and the body. And that can happen in as little as an hour to 2 hours. And people will come, they often say to me, it's taken me 20 years to not solve this. How did it happen so quickly? Well, when you have an embodied experience that's using multiple senses, it causes a very quick shift and it causes a lasting shift. So absolutely directly to the point of trauma. Women who've been traumatized, if you ask them, they either have blanked out the event or they completely remember every single detail. They can tell you the smells, the colors, everything about it. Well, this is the antidote. The antidote is we're going to look at what happened. We're going to go all the way in there. And then we're going to look at what is the significance of that. What is the gift in that? What is the impact, and how do we begin reframing it so that, you know, that scar that we talked about, that begins to heal and it becomes your strength. And so often I'll have people who come in who say, I had this terrible thing happen. And we look at it and I say, tell me about you and your career. Oh my goodness, do you realize that you do this because of this? Right. Now let's look at how we couple the two together and why that's become a strength for you. And do you understand you're not a survivor? You're actually a thriver, and you're a creator. You're co-creating something remarkable out of what happened. I think often we forget that life is a journey and life is an adventure, which means it doesn't all trend up. Sometimes there are really big bumps, but often the big bumps are the big launch pads to something remarkable. We just aren't taught to do that.
That's right. Wow, that was really beautiful, Judy. I love that. Now, this episode's not going to air, though, until 2024. So do you have events yet planned for then?
We don't have them listed yet. They've absolutely planned for 2024. People come in from all over the world, literally, and they can do one of four, or they can do all of four. And if they do all of four, then there is a certification that goes with that. And I always say to people, and one of the very nicest things is one of the four is always a Disney or a destination place. So they get to do that too. Because part of thriving is stretching, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned that the meditations can be found on your website. Is that where your events are? Yeah, okay.
The events are all listed on the website, yeah.
Okay, and can you share your website domain with us?
Of course, Judy Wilkins Smith.com. The other piece that's helpful is that they can find me on Spotify, they can find me on Facebook, they can find me on YouTube, they can find me on Instagram, and they can find me in Psychology Today, because Psychology Today lists it as one of their must-reads.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. And so the book, is it just the one book out so far? When's the second one coming out?
It's the one book out so far. We are busy on the second one. You know, I never intended to write the first one. I really didn't. I wrote a little ebook because people kept saying to me, you've got to get this out. You've got to get this out. And then the little ebook turned into a full-on book. And then they said, you need an agent. And I said, I don't need an agent. Then I got an agent. And then the agent said, you need a literary agent. I went, no, I don't. And then Sounds True came on board, and they have been phenomenal.
Yeah.
Really big shout out. Sounds True is just amazing. And I will be teaching a course for them also this year, but maybe again next year.
I'm in their program that has the app with all the different offerings. Is that where you're going to be? Or is it a separate program?
Yes. No, I think that's where the offerings will be. I know we are recording it pretty soon, and it debuts in September, and it's all about money DNA. What did you inherit? How do you find yourself stuck, and how do you thrive?
Mm-hmm. That's very exciting. I'm an affiliate for Sounds True, so we will certainly be promoting that. So that's wonderful.
That's great.
And your book, is that found on most bookstores, Amazon? How do people find it?
Everywhere. Yeah, Barnes. Something to mention about the book that I didn't is it's now translated into 7 languages. So it is 7 languages in many countries, and it's on at all the big booksellers. Sorry.
Very cool. Okay, so as we wrap up, for the listener out there that knows they don't want to suffer, but they're stuck right now in that, which is common and what happens after trauma, what's the very bestest of advices? I'm making up words now. What's the best advice My bestest of advices. Number 1, it's only going to be permanent if you choose it. So be aware of that. The first thing you want to ask yourself is, what's possible now? Honestly, for some people, it's, I can't even move. My body is in a bad condition. If you can wiggle your little finger, you are moving. If you can lift your eyebrows, you are moving. If you are thinking, you are moving. The second thing is, don't get discouraged. You're going to have bumps. Think of the stock exchange. Literally, it's like the stock exchange. You're going to go up, you're going to go down. You're going to go up, you're going to go down. But keep making sure that you're at the very least putting one foot in front of the other every single day. Because not only is it going to get you out of suffering and trauma, you're going to find that at the end of that, you have a gift. Your gift is waiting for you. It's waiting for you. Don't get stuck in the suffering. Understand this is the beginning of your journey to your great gift, and it will be your purpose in life. On that note, we should just end on that note. I love that, Judy. Purpose. Thank you so much for being a guest today.
It was a great pleasure. It was a super conversation. I'm grateful you had me on.
Thank you for listening in today. Please join us next week, same day and time. Also, I would love for you to check out my website, healthrivedream.com.